Hi everyone. Today I want to teach you how to paint Nighthaunts and Undead in my favorite way. It's fast and easy. It looks great. It's got poppin' fluorescent colors, and I think you're really going to like it. So let's get after it.
These are all the paints I'm going to be using in the video. It's my favorite primer and airbrush medium, varnish, white paint. I use a lot of pro acryl because I'm a big fan of the paints, and the golden high flow stuff is fantastic through an airbrush. It just tends to be glossy, which is why I have the matte varnish. I'm not saying you have to use these paints. It's just they're my preferred paints. You can use whichever paint you prefer to get the job done. I always start off with some airbrush medium. Just use your preferred airbrush medium for this. And I've started adding a little water because it makes my airbrush medium last a lot longer, and I get the same results. I didn't count the drops when I was doing this. I just kind of know what consistency I'm looking for, but I wanted to show it on the camera for anyone who is still new to airbrushing. These little plastic pipettes are amazing for mixing your paint. Like, you don't have to do the little back blow or anything or use a brush. When you start, make sure you don't spray the model first. Spritz on some cardboard or something. Make sure you've got a decent consistency. And then I get my base coat and I just start directly from the top, straight down, just light dusting. Build up your layers slowly. You don't want to overspray it, and you don't want to spray from the sides because you'll lose your shadow effect. Some of the best advice I got for airbrushing was from Vince, and I'll share his channel in the description. And he basically said the airbrush already saves you so much time that you should just slow down and work in very thin layers to just make the process that much better. You get such fantastic results so quickly with the airbrush that you might as well take your time when you're doing it, because it's still a net gain in productivity. When I'm airbrushing or painting with a regular brush, I use a hair dryer to help reduce the wait time between layers. This is the final pass with the main color to make sure that I've got a nice even coverage that I'm happy with. And that's the final result of the base layer. I try to avoid the shadows, spray almost completely from above, and just make sure I've got a nice even coat. To get the vibrant glowing effect on the model with the fluorescent paints, you need to use a white undercoat, and this is a custom mix of mine. It's the golden so flat titanium white mixed with white ink and a lot of airbrush medium. This may sound kind of obvious, but just pick a direction you want the light to hit the model and just start spraying. For these, it's on the underside, so I just do light coats. Take my time, thin layers, dry them with the hair dryer between layers, and just keep building it up until you're happy with the result. It may look a little harsh right now, but as you do this more often, you'll kind of figure out what kind of wiggle room you have and kind of how intense the white needs to be. I'm using the golden high flow fluorescents because they're pre-thinned for the airbrush and ready to go, and I just really enjoy the colors. This is a mixture of fluorescent green and fluorescent chartreuse, aka yellow. And yet again, I'm just using the pipette to mix everything. It's the same pipette I used earlier. I just rinse them with water between paints. With the fluorescents, make sure it's coming out of the brush correctly and just apply it in the same direction you applied the white. We can use a little bit of overspray to our advantage here, because what you want is you want the white to be covered by the fluorescent and a little bit of the fluorescent to spill over onto the regular color, because it adds to that glow. I believe the scientific term is cheesing the system. I'm using this matte varnish to knock back the gloss on these high flow paints. My only problem with the high flows is they are just so glossy, and we all know that gloss is the devil. And here is the final result for these guys. I plan on making a video later on for the basing. It's super simple technique, and if anyone wants me to move it up my production queue, just leave a comment and let me know. And I think it's time to move on to the next set. For this part of the video, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to use what Dana Howell called the air chop method. I'll share a link to the video in the description. And what it does is it adds extra contrast to the model itself by applying a wash and then a dry brush. And since we've already been over this part of the technique, I'm just going to talk over it. I prefer this version where you apply a wash and then a dry brush because it just adds a lot of depth to the model. But if you're feeling lazy and you want to just literally blast the models with your airbrush and get some stuff done, you can just do what I did in the first half. For this, I'm using a 50-50 mix of black Templar contrast and contrast medium because I don't want it to be too dark. I just want it to tint the whole model, and then I can bring it back up with dry brushing. For the dry brush, I'm using paint a little wetter than you would normally use in a dry brush, and that allows me to get a nice coverage. And all you need to do is make sure you avoid getting into the shadows. And I'm using a makeup brush because they are so much better than any other brushes for dry brushing. I can't recommend them enough. Just go to the dollar store, get some makeup brushes, and it might change your life. For the rest of this video, we're just going to be using the same techniques we used in the first half. Just keep in mind, thin coats, dry between layers, just build up your fluorescence slowly like you do with everything else, and use the overspray to your advantage. I showed this model because she's flying at a different angle, and it just shows that you don't have to always spray from directly below. You can spray from the side or from any other direction. You just don't want to overdo it from the top. I have messed up a lot of models trying to spray a glow from above. It just looks wrong. And here is the final result. With this, you get a little more realistic look. It's kind of grimy, and overall, I think it just looks better. And here they are in a group photo. I'm not sure which color scheme I like more. I'm leaning toward the front ones just because they're the same aesthetic as my favorite Toxic Holocaust album cover. But if anyone has a preference, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And with that, I want to say thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Like and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. And I'll see you next time.